I work in learning and development. I'm part of the UVA Human Resources team. I want to thank you for joining us this morning and investing in yourself. Today, we're going to talk about establishing expectations for the next 100 days or so. And what we've been doing and has been received pretty well are what you're participating in right now, which are these micro-learning project or these micro-learning sessions. We take about 15 minutes. We get in, we get out, and we hustle through some information that we hope will be helpful to you and things that you can implement right away. No need for you to take notes. We're going to send out some resources to you when we finish today, along with a survey to give us some feedback. If you have any questions during this quick session, I'm going to be super focused on the slides and what messages I'm trying to convey. But if you have questions, please use the chat feature and reach out to Kate Bellevue, and she'll respond on my behalf, hopefully. So let's move along. I want to talk to you today about operating norms and establishing those, or using operating norms to help establish and convey expectations, not just for you, the leader, to your team, but also for your leader to you, from your team to you as the leader. And so when I started thinking about this, I was thinking, God, remember that one time, Rose, you were on that team that just everything clicked, everything gelled. It was well-oiled machine. And sometimes I've found myself in certain points of throughout my career wishing for that again, which then prompts the next question of, so how did that happen? It didn't just happen, right? And so what we know is that effective leaders tend to create with their team, so not in a silo, not all by themselves, but they tend to create with their teams what are called agreed upon norms or operating norms. And what I want to talk about with you today is a way to level set, not only yourself, but also with your team. So essentially, now that we're not only working remotely and from various locations, but we're working remotely from various locations during a pandemic, is I'm going to ask you to think about how can you and your team show up differently. And I want to give you some ideas with the intention to be that to move you to a space, and maybe you're already there, but making it better in terms of where you can be more candid with one another, where you can have healthy dialogue, increase the team's performance, and also increase trust amongst the team members. And one of the places that first starts, again, with this theme of showing up differently, is this idea that we use this a lot in the classrooms, called permission slips. Permission slips are seen as, it's almost intention setting. It's, what do I need to give myself permission to do in order to show up differently? And what we found as we go through this process is that it builds trust. It allows us an opportunity to identify barriers that are within us. So this piece of what I'm suggesting tends to be rather introspective. And it also, again, helps us, how can I show up differently? So if I typically show up, whether I work remotely or when we used to all be in congregated together, if I tend to show up in a more quiet way, you know, why is that? Let me explore that for a minute. Why do I tend to be more quiet? And what's something I could do or give myself permission to do to mitigate that and maybe to chime in here and there? If I'm the person that's always chiming in, what's something that I can do to give myself permission to maybe share the floor or share the space with others, or maybe hold back a little bit and allow others to move forward? If I see that I tend to show up, maybe not in every meeting, but with certain individuals where I tend to discount other people's ideas or thoughts, or I get in heavy judgment zone, you know, maybe I need to give myself permission to open my mind and see things differently. One of the things that will help you as a leader is to share your observations with your team before you go through an activity such as this. So share, what are you seeing? What would you like to see? Share with them what you see gets in your own way, right? Often as leaders, we've got to go first to show not only what we expect, give some examples, but also show that vulnerability. And again, this is very introspective activity. So I want to give you some examples. If I'm talking to a team, and maybe it's about working remotely, as Anne mentioned yesterday, if you were on that session, we thought maybe we were going to be working remotely or through this disruption for a couple of months, if that, and it's turning out to be longer and longer, and we're not even sure for how long, right? And so maybe I need to open my mind. Maybe this is the time for me to ask for what it is that I need. Maybe it's time to ask for more time, right? It's not this isn't the space for me to rush through things. Maybe it's time for me to be a learner and not a knower. So if I were to focus on meetings, let's say, how we show up differently when it comes to meetings, maybe it's participate more. Maybe I need to give myself permission to participate less. Maybe encourage others to share their voice or their perspective. Maybe it's permission to ask what I might myself refer to as a dumb question. Maybe it's to respond to someone and say, I'm not sure, I don't know. And again, very introspective. These tend to be more private thoughts. Maybe it's what are permissions that I need to give myself or help my team to show up differently when it comes to their schedule, right? Our work settings, everybody's working, most of us, someplace differently. And so maybe I need to give myself to permission to get up and take a walk in this, beautiful 100-degree weather that we've got going on here. Maybe I need to give myself permission on certain things when it comes to my schedule. Maybe my kids are at home, grandkids, animals are around, right? Maybe my work is better when I do it in the evenings or late afternoon rather than at 8 or 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Maybe this is a time to give permission on how to monitor work performance of my team members and evaluate their performance, right? And that's something that you're going to talk about more in tomorrow's session. The next thing I want to talk about is container building. So let me help explain. I know these are new terms for many of you. Permission slips are what I need to show up differently. Container building is what do I need in order to feel safe showing up differently, maybe than I have in the past. And so these are 3 great questions that you see on your slide here. And oftentimes I'll do this in a classroom setting, not just when we were in person, but also now that we're teaching a lot of things virtually. So this can easily be converted to a remote setting, but asking people, what do you need to feel open and safe on this team or in our team meetings? What will get in the way of you showing up and doing this work? And maybe it's in a meeting, or maybe it's on a particular project, or it's a new assignment or a new role. Maybe I'm covering for somebody. Maybe we have a vacancy that we're not able to fill, and so several of us have to kind of pick up the work and keep it moving. And then the third question is really important, which is especially from the leader and the rest of the team members, but what does support look like? And I need to be able as a team member to answer that question, to think about it and answer that question, and then convey what does support look like for me? Because in the absence of that, my leader and my team members don't have any idea. They're guessing, they're trying to interpret what's going on, and that's wasteful, right? We're wasting time on that. And so if you're picking up on any theme here, is that I want to help you through some of these strategies to have these conversations. So what do I need to feel safe? We call that container building, meaning a safe container. Again, this allows us an opportunity to freely and safely express our ideas and concerns. If you don't want to do this in a group setting, I also think these are great questions that you can have in a one-on-one meeting with a team member. And then check in with people periodically. Follow up in future one-on-ones or in large team meetings. Maybe there's a setback. Or as I mentioned, a vacancy, and it's important for me to touch base with my team members to see how they're doing. The last thing I want to talk about are group operating norms, and these are how we show up differently, right? So permission slips are what I need to show up differently. Container building is what I need to feel safe when I'm showing up differently. And operating norms are how. These are behaviors. Typically, what you want to do is come up with maybe 1 to 3 norms or operating norms that you've seen have been successful in other places you've worked or other teams. And that's just not for the leader to come up with. This is a conversation with your team to kind of get the buy-in and get people's input. If we say on our team that one of our norms is a consistent cadence of communication or full participation when we're in a meeting or working on a project or whatnot, then what we've got to do is break down that expectation to say, what are the behaviors around that? And ask the question and have conversation about what does full participation look like, right? And it looks different to everybody, but that's where we're having the conversation. We want to commit to 5 or fewer norms, right? I don't want a litany of 12 things or 82 behaviors to work on this team. That's too much. You can break it down into 5 or so norms. I would also suggest creating a recurring plan. So going back and revisiting that. I've seen a lot of people choose that phrase of the low-hanging fruit. And then once those behaviors become hardwired, then we move on to what might be some more difficult things. Like, let's create that foundation. Let's hardwire those more simpler things to do, which sets us up for success, builds our confidence so that we can move on and tackle the bigger things. There's also an opportunity to create this mutual accountability within these operating norms. So who's going to do what? So how are we going to hold each other accountable? When will we hold each other accountable? Who's holding each other accountable? What other dynamics do we need to consider as we're working through that? And with that, I want to give you a couple of examples. And these are some that we've collected throughout our time as we work with teams as they create operating norms. So it might be, you know, if we've got a habit of not having the right conversation with the right person, maybe that first one, and we talk to the person, not about the person. We come prepared to meetings, and that's a good example of what does coming prepared to meetings look like. So sometimes we really have to flesh these out a bit. We ask for help, we ask for support, we ask for what materials are. How about this one, give grace, that we care for each other as people. And we know with the current dynamics that are going on that grace was showing up pretty strong in some pockets, and that seems to ebb and flow. I'm kind of watching that. Everybody's getting to a different place at a different time, and so it doesn't hurt to have this reminder of anybody having examples of giving grace to one another or something that they've seen or observed. Creating a checkout time. You know, sometimes as a team, it's okay, things get kind of wound up tight, and it's okay to say, hey, let's take almost a timeout, or let's just take a break and come back to this, whether it's in a few minutes, another day, or maybe in another week, depends on what time you have. So again, you don't have to take notes. We're gonna send out a document that has all this information I've shared with you. That's what I want to share. I'm watching the clock, I won't lie. These are our sessions for the rest of the week. Tomorrow we've got Jacob Henderson talking about tips for meaningful performance conversations. And on Thursday, you're going to hear from rewards and recognition team members on ways to recognize people, especially in a virtual space, such as many of us are working in now. Also want to point out that Kate's going to add in the chat feature the link that if you have any requests for the organizational development or learning and development teams, requests for services on OD type of work, or if you say, hey, can you bring the content from your class on tough conversations to my team? You can use the form that we have. We'll include this in the email that comes out after today, but there's a link so that you can complete that form and we can have a conversation on how that might look. And last but not least, your feedback's important to us. So if you've got a QR code reader on your phone, you can put that right up there to your monitor, and we would love your feedback on today's session or upcoming sessions. Again, I want to thank you for your time. 15 minutes blows by for me anyway. Maybe you felt it drug on. I'll stay on the line for a few minutes if anybody has questions or wants to chat, and we'll see you here tomorrow, same time, same bat channel. Have a great day. Thank you.